Tanzanian Mystery by Cassie Borodenko. Chapter 1. Tickets to Tanzania. Mary Pine, a slight, mousy-haired woman in her mid-twenties, sat comfortably in her favourite armchair at the living room window, looking wistfully at the row of neatly kept houses on her grey, dreary street. She sometimes liked to sit there pretending to read while she was actually snooping on her neighbours or daydreaming. Mary lived with two friends in a small, rather rainy town in the north of England. Burdened with student debts and earning only a tiny salary, it made financial sense to share a house, although she was tired of being the only one to care about keeping the place clean and tidy. Mary ignored the mess surrounding her, sighed, sipped her tea, and continued to gaze at the empty street while looking for something exciting to happen. Her day had in fact been fairly eventful for a change. Mary worked as a quality control technician at a factory that manufactured garden tools. Usually her days at Green-Fingered Garden Supplies consisted of inspecting the various implements as they were assembled before they were packed up and shipped to customers and stores across the UK. On this particular day, however, her colleague Andy had somehow gotten his sleeves stuck in some machinery, and Mary, as the closest other person to the frantically yelling man, had been required to rescue him. She had rushed to hit the emergency stop button before cutting the stubbornly stuck sleeve with a pair of garden shears which happened to be nearby. While Andy had thankfully remained unharmed, except for his dented pride, the incident had still resulted in a whole stack of boring paperwork and a long lecture from the boss about health and safety. Mary continued to stare out at the drizzly January evening when she saw her neighbour's familiar red Fiat rounding the corner, a little too fast, and pulling up in front of the house next door. Mary was slightly jealous of her next-door neighbour Scarlett, who seemed to lead such an exciting life. She had an interesting job as an event organiser, led a busy social life, and always seemed to have plenty of time off work to travel to exotic locations around the world. To her surprise, her tall, glamorous neighbour waved at Mary as she exited the car, before marching determinedly to her front door. Mary guessed that Scarlett wanted to speak to one of her absent housemates, but dutifully left the comfort of her armchair to greet her. "Everyone's out, it's just me here," Mary said uncertainly. "Oh, I know," Scarlett replied cheerfully. "Actually, it's you I wanted to see." "Oh, really?" Mary asked. She liked her neighbour, but never thought that the popular party-loving woman felt the same way about her. "Yes," Scarlett laughed. "I won 2 tickets for an all-expenses-paid holiday in Tanzania, and I thought you might like to come with me." She waved a safari brochure enthusiastically, as if to demonstrate her point. "Wouldn't you rather go with Jemima or Sharon?" Mary asked, referring to her housemates who had often joined Scarlett on beach holidays and had even tried skiing in the Alps since she had broken up with her travel-loving boyfriend. Scarlett paused and blushed slightly before answering. "They can't come. Jemima's too scared of spiders to even consider going, and Sharon will be at her cousin's wedding then. But they suggested that I should invite you, as you haven't really travelled out of the UK much, and you do love watching travel and nature documentaries all about Africa. This way you can see lions and elephants up close, instead of just watching them on the TV." Scarlett didn't mention that she had also invited various relatives, colleagues and friends who, unfortunately, were also unavailable for the trip. She regretted being single, as her ex would have definitely made the long journey with her. Despite this, Mary couldn't believe her luck. Even though she wasn't Scarlett's first choice of a travel companion, she was still being offered the trip of a lifetime. "You said it was all expenses paid?" Mary asked tentatively. She was sure that her tiny salary from Green-Fingered Garden Supplies would not be enough to pay for the flights, let alone the accommodation in the luxurious lodge pictured in the brochure that Scarlett was still waving around eagerly. "Of course, flights, accommodation, food and safari tours are all included in the price," Scarlett reassured her. "All you would need to pay for are souvenirs, mozzie spray and alcohol at the hotel bar. Soft drinks are free, but unfortunately we need to pay extra for our wine and G&Ts. While Scarlett looked disappointed at the lack of free gin and tonics, Mary felt relieved. She rarely drank alcohol and could not imagine herself buying many souvenirs, so she would not need to spend much money at all for such a luxurious and adventurous holiday. "But when is it?" Mary asked. "In March," her neighbour replied excitedly. "I've already booked the time off work. I know it's short notice, but I hope you can too." Mary considered her answer carefully before replying that it would be much easier to take time off in March than it would be during the summer holidays, which was when most of her colleagues usually booked their package holidays to Spain. "Then it's agreed you'll come," Scarlett replied eagerly, feeling secretly relieved that she wouldn't have to travel all the way to Africa alone. "Here are all the details. I'll send an email to the travel agent to confirm your flight." She handed Mary the safari brochure that she had been waving around and a travel itinerary. Then she walked across to her own front door. "We'll speak more about it later, but I've got to dash now. I'm expected at an engagement party in 30 minutes and I need to change first." It took Mary a few moments to return to reality after Scarlett had rushed into her house, banging her front door carelessly behind her. She stood on the doorstep, looking at the drizzly rain, before returning dreamily to her favourite armchair. Once safely nestled, she finished her now-cold cup of tea and began to study the brochure and itinerary. The holiday would be for 2 weeks at the Caribou Safari Lodge, a luxurious lodge on the outskirts of the Serengeti National Park. The itinerary gave flight details, as well as information about the vaccines that were required before travelling to Tanzania. Mary was not a fan of needles and shuddered slightly at the thought of them, but the more she thought about the holiday, the more determined she became to not miss out. The brochure showed stunning pictures of the national park and wildlife, as well as the lodge's comfortable accommodation, delicious restaurant meals, and relaxing swimming pool. "I wonder how Scarlett managed to win tickets to this place," Mary wondered. She collected her laptop from her room and returned to her window seat to research their holiday destination on the internet. After several hours of gazing at stunning images of the landscape, researching the potential dangerous bugs and snakes that they might encounter, and taking notes of interesting facts and useful information, Mary decided that it was time for bed. She was surprised that her housemates had not yet returned home, and left a note for them on the kitchen fridge asking them to tidy up when they got back. While sharing a house with her old school friends had been fun at first, Mary was becoming increasingly fed up at the other women's lack of cleanliness, and the way that they were always seemed to be somewhere in the bathroom at the precise time that she needed to use it. This evening, Mary was relieved to shower and brush her teeth in peace before going to bed and dreaming of vast savannas, marching elephants, and majestic lions. The next morning, Mary was annoyed to find the bathroom occupied by a housemate cheerfully singing in the shower. As the house only had one bathroom, she kept a spare toothbrush and toothpaste in her room to at least brush her teeth at the kitchen sink while she waited. Upon entering the kitchen, Mary had quite an unpleasant surprise. Rather than cleaning up their mess, her housemates had apparently decided to cook themselves a snack before going to bed. So the pile of pans and dishes at the sink had grown, along with the general streaks of spattered sauce on the worktops and hob. Mary sighed and somehow avoided knocking over the mountain of washing up while brushing her teeth. Then she hastily got dressed into her dark green work uniform and hurried out of the house to use the bathroom at work. Her singing housemate was still occupying the shower, despite Mary's knocks on the door and urgent pleas for her to hurry up. Luckily, Green-Fingered Garden Supplies was just a short walk from her house, which Mary thought was the only good thing about working there. She had applied for so many jobs after graduating from university, but unfortunately, this was the only one that had offered her a position. So Mary continued to trudge to work every day, sometimes half-heartedly applying for other jobs during the evenings and weekends. After a brisk walk, Mary encountered Dom, her boss, at the entrance to the building. The short, rotund man was in the habit of waiting at the door to greet his employees every morning, although Mary knew that he was really just checking that all the staff arrived on time. She hesitated to approach him, fearing another boring health and safety lecture, but on this occasion he held out his stout hand enthusiastically and heartily shook Mary's. "Well, well, well, Mary, aren't you the adventurer?" he exclaimed jovially. "Although I must admit, I didn't think you had it in you. But here we are, Mary, off to Africa." Dom clapped Mary gruffly on the back in a sort of congratulatory gesture. Mary was stunned. She wondered how Dom had found out about her news so quickly. "News travels fast, doesn't it?" her boss continued, as if reading her thoughts. "My wife met your housemate Jemima in the corner shop yesterday evening, and she told her all about it." "Oh, yeah, it's a small world, isn't it?" Mary replied, feeling a little annoyed at the idea of people gossiping about her holiday plans. "But of course you can have the time off work," Dom continued eagerly. "Just fill in the paperwork to request the dates you need, and make sure you tell everyone you meet in Africa about the amazing quality and affordable prices of our garden tools. We're always interested in expanding to new markets." Mary thanked him and stifled a laugh. She had no intention of mentioning her dull job while on the holiday of a lifetime. She left Dom and proceeded hastily to the bathroom before heading to the staff kitchen to make her usual morning cup of tea. "All right, Mary," Andy greeted her while she was drinking her tea and sleepily perusing a magazine that someone had left in the kitchen. "Try not to get eaten by lions in Africa," he winked. "I'll try," Mary replied nervously. Although dashingly handsome, with dark wavy hair and a charming smile, Andy was rarely pleasant to anyone. Usually he would only speak to her in order to make a mean comment about her appearance or to ask some kind of favour. On this occasion it seemed that he was not in the mood to tease her further, as he simply made himself a cup of tea and sauntered out of the kitchen again, whistling cheerfully to himself. Perhaps rescuing him from a machine the previous day had earned Mary a brief respite from his usual unpleasantness. Mary's day continued as normal, as she rushed to the doctor's office as soon as she left work to book an appointment for the necessary travel vaccines. Mary had a slight fear of doctors and needles, but she thought that it would be better to not risk catching some kind of deadly tropical disease. When she returned home with a huge stack of health pamphlets, Mary was surprised to find Scarlett lounging in her favourite chair in the living room, drinking coffee from a chipped cup and talking animatedly to her curly-haired, plump housemate Sharon about the holiday. "Hi, I've been waiting for you," Scarlett grinned. "I came round to see if you had any questions about our trip." "I bet you're excited," Sharon added warmly. "I told Scarlett that you'd be interested in seeing lions, elephants, zebras and so on. I'm so jealous that I can't go, but I'm a bridesmaid at my cousin's wedding, so I can't really miss that." Indeed, Mary was excited, and her mind was buzzing with questions about their trip to Tanzania. But as she was currently filled with dread about malaria after her visit to the doctors, she decided to not voice her questions and simply allow Scarlett to continue talking about the things that interested her about the holiday. "We'll be staying in a luxury safari tent. There's a pool at the lodge, lounges for sunbathing, a lovely restaurant and bar, excellent guides who will take us to the safari parks, nearby villages, markets and souvenir shops," Scarlett informed them eagerly. They continued talking until Scarlett had to leave for a date with some guy she had met online. Then Mary settled into continuing her research about her holiday by watching The Lion King, after trying unsuccessfully to encourage Sharon to tidy up some of her mess in the kitchen. During the weeks leading up to the big day, Mary continued to gather information and prepare for her holiday. She made several trips to the local library to borrow as many books about Tanzania as she was allowed, which she perused every evening. Having something so exciting to look forward to somehow made her boring job, messy housemates, and the cold, rainy winter months seem all the more bearable.